Welcome back to Loserville, folks. I am geographically out of Loserville, never away from Loserville in mind and spirit, but coming to you from the cloudy, cool climes of Whitefish, Montana today. David, where are you?
I'm in the beautiful city of Dallas, Texas. Where it's actually only like 93 degrees today, so it's not too bad. It's been a weird summer.
Yeah, it actually looks like you're in your usual recording location,
Yeah, my home
but
office.
undisclosed to the listener in case anybody wants to egg his house. Um, okay, well, I guess the big news, we were going to record a budget episode because we fully anticipated having the budget by now, but council got briefed on Wednesday on not the budget. And
Yeah,
that agenda, I have to say, looked, I would have been questioning why we were having that meeting. And I suppose that the answer is to um, crater to the Trump administration's threats.
yeah,
Um, so in general, they're not supposed to vote on action items on briefing days. It's a violation of the city council rules, but they can do so if an item is labeled emergency. And of course, the emergency is in the eye of the beholder. The truth is, council can do whatever the hell it wants to. It's I am struggling, and I've not received any response from our friends on council with why do you cave in publicly to these executive orders threatening federal funding for organizations that try to improve DEI. Um,
yeah. Like I think the way they're viewing it is that there's 305 million reasons why. Whether that's the correct way to go down or not, I think that's what staff and council is debating. They think that these hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funding will go away if they don't, right?
yeah, I mean, that's definitely the story they're telling. I don't know. Like, have they received a specific threat to a specific grant? Like, how does the Trump administration doesn't have a big audit department that's going through the policies of the thousands of cities across the United States. So, why did both Fort Worth and Dallas pick this week to publicly um, prostrate themselves before the altar of Trump? I find it curious, and I find the
Yeah.
lack of sort of resistance messaging from council members in both cities to be a little bit strange. Now, I got something from the District 2 guy in Fort Worth today that explains his thinking, and it comes basically just down to what you said.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the serious question I have is if why are we not suing?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. And I think, just for context, we're recording this on Thursday, August 7th. So Fort Worth has already, right, officially voted to
Hmm.
basically acquiesce. And that was it was a tight vote, but sometimes in cases like this, like I want to be clear, like I have no inside knowledge here, but given that it was a tight vote and given who voted which way and some of the public comments, it wouldn't shock me if it was somewhat of an orchestrated vote where it was, we got our majority, and then the folks who voted no, some of them waited to vote no until they knew that the majority had the votes. Like this seems like a decision that generally city councils will go all in together and then there'll be vote counting behind the scenes before they cast the official vote.
I think you're probably right about that. I
Yeah.
mean, my approach to it would be to just vote no, you know, call them a bunch of bastards
Yeah.
and move on. I don't understand the urge, and this is something that has been advocated for by the editorial board at the morning news forever. Like consensus on council is not actually that good a thing, in my opinion. There are like
Mhm.
no-brainer decisions that ought to be unanimous, but in a matter of controversy, where there's serious debate around the country about these things, I just see unanimous votes as a dereliction of duty. Like you
Yeah,
just, I don't, I mean, the thing is, you when you have a board that is lockstep with each other and also lockstep with staff, which is the case here, there's an important oversight function that is not happening, And there's not like robust policy setting here. And I think the basic federal law has been for many, many years, lots and lots of Supreme Court jurisprudence, not that stare decisis has any continued meaning in the current day, but if we were to apply previous precedent, the the federal government can give at its pleasure. Now, typically that's Congress, and these
yeah.
grants that they're looking at are congressional, or authorized by Congress is probably the right way to say it. But the federal government cannot take away without due process after that point. Once you have been given something, it cannot be snatched from you. It creates a property right that has to be adjudicated because otherwise it's a taking under the Fifth Amendment. Now, that's really complex when it gets down to funding cities for grants for certain things. There are lots of courts who would look at that and say, "No, Philip, you moron, that's not a taking. They're allowed to do that." But they're not allowed to do it without some kind of due process, and an executive order is not fucking it. And so when this stuff happens, I think there is a path not only for a court to say double birds to you, Trump, but also to say, and by the way, pay the city's lawyer bills on your way out the door. Now, does that wind up at the Supreme Court and the six drones just give him whatever he wants? Maybe, but I don't know why city of Dallas wouldn't be fighting.
Yeah, but not even the Supreme Court. I mean, theoretically, if you started to get some bad, lower court decisions, Trump would just have Congress vote to rescind these grants to certain places, and that would easily sail through Congress, and then he'd sign it and they'd be gone. If the question is the executive orders.
I don't know if I agree with that because the money we're talking about is home and HOPWA stuff that is, earmarked for people living with HIV. It's dollars that go to veteran housing. I mean, there's lots of opportunity to knock off one or two Republican senators, and then they don't have the juice to get it through Congress.
I mean, Congress just voted to like strip millions of people off their health insurance, do things that would probably close rural hospitals, balloon the national debt, which obviously nobody cares about, but Republicans say they care about. I wouldn't put it past this Congress to pass anything Trump tells them to do. I mean, here in Texas, they're about to pass congressional redistricting because Trump told them to, even though I think basically every Republican down in Austin in the state house and state senate with, any sense knows that that map is going to fall apart sooner rather than later. But they're doing it because Trump tells them to do it.
That's a decent segue. We probably ought to talk about the decampment of the Dems from uh, the special session,
Yeah.
breaking quorum. I had some conversations with our Dem friends who are in undisclosed locations. Actually, they unfortunately publicized where they are too much. They're in
Yeah.
Chicago and in New York,
Hmm.
and except maybe Salman Bojani, who might be in Pakistan for some
Yeah.
kind of medical deal. I have
His
no idea.
mother-in-law is very, very sick.
I
But
think
but
that's kind of
the
I think
it's
that's
it's
kind of
it's the old
clever.
saying, Pakistan is not Austin, Texas. So I've been told, so he's still doing what he's supposed to do.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And the I think that anyway, the calls to me, which I guess I have some kind of credibility on this stuff. I don't know why exactly. I've never been in the legislature, but the calls to me were, what is the plan? Like, what is the strategic long-term plan? I'm like, well, it's just as easy as the Progressive Caucus is saying it is. It's stay gone till the session's over and see if Greg Abbott is actually mad and wants to call another session, or whether he can then go back to Trump and say, well, look, man, we tried.
Yeah, and the bigger the bigger thing at play here too is that this is not actually going to get decided in Texas. I think the Trump political team did not expect the level of organization and pushback from some of the states that are controlled pretty much top down by Democrats. You have places like California that, draw via an independent commission. And so they thought, nothing can be done there. And then Gavin Newsom, whether you love him or hate him, I mean, the guy is a maniac. And, that's working out in Democrats' favor right
I
now.
love him some days and I hate him other days.
Yeah. But, the thing you got to give Newsom is that out of everyone thinking about, what is my 5-year plan, he more so than anyone else probably hates the Republican Party more than anyone else in that potential field. And so you got to give him like a little bit of an asterisk there because I mean he hates them. But Newsom has basically found a way to put up a ballot measure in California that would let them redraw and specifically try to redraw 5 Republican members out of California. There's other states that are talking about it as well, New York, Maryland, and a few others. And, you have a few Republican members of Congress who come from like red areas of blue states that are really starting to publicly speak out on this matter. The most prominent one is probably Kevin Kiley out of California,
He's
who
been,
inter
yeah, he's put a
yeah,
real fine point on it and
yeah,
said, look, it's clear to me that these people had no idea what they were doing.
yeah. And what's interesting is like he really coaxed it with like Trump got bad advice or Trump got a bad strategy. So it's not Trump's fault, to be clear, because you can't criticize Trump the man. But Kylie has really gone on the record publicly that Trump's political team screwed this up. Like they might get a wash on this across the nation where, they're not
That'd be the
actually going to
best
pick
they
up.
can do.
Yeah, that's about the best they can do. And in the process, a lot of Republican congressmen are about to be forced out of office. So Kylie even introduced legislation to ban all mid-decade redistricting, and it's backdated essentially to like November 2024. So if his legislation gets any movement, and he's publicly called on, Speaker Mike Johnson to kind of get this under control. I mean, and Kylie, has blamed Gavin Newsom. He's blamed Hakeem Jeffries, to be clear, but he, called on Johnson, like, let's get this legislation moving. I think it faces a steep hurdle, but the fact that you have folks like Kylie, like Mike Lawler, who's a Republican congressman out of New York, kind of saying the same things, the fact that you have these Republican congressmen kind of trying to put the brakes on this and tell Trump to back down, I think could be this thing that saves Texas.
I think you're right about that. I also actually think that the Dem caucus can stay gone for this is the 7th, and they got to stay gone until the
19th.
the
It's the
19th.
it's the 19th, yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I mean they made it 38 days last time. I think they can make it.
Yeah, especially because one of the biggest issues last time is they ran out of money. Like
Mhm.
people don't recognize that, but that really was one of the bigger problems. Um, the national party wasn't funding them. Individual donors kind of lost their attention span after, you know, a news cycle or two. But this time, national Democrats are actually interested in helping fund this quorum break. I mean, you've seen, Abbott and others basically say like they're getting bribed, which is obviously like a complete, misunderstanding or just straight up lie about how
Straight up
bribery actually
lie.
works. Yeah. Yeah.
So, interestingly, I have some behind the scenes. The Republicans are the Republican House members are making calls to their Democratic colleagues,
Mhm.
those that will still accept the
Yeah.
call of a Republican colleague. And the threat is hilarious to me. The threat to the threat to the Democrats in the most vulnerable districts, so the smallest D
Yeah.
plus margins. Um, the threat is this: come back, and we are going to take care of you. We're not going to crack your district. We're going to pack it. We're going to
Yeah.
make you unbeatable in your district. And if you don't, we are going to make your district unwinnable for you. So the threat is hilarious. It's come back, or we're going to do the thing that we're going to do if you come back.
Yeah.
You
Wait, are
know,
they calling congressional members or state house members?
State House.
But they're
States
not even
this,
they're not even taking up state house redistricting.
except that's the threat.
But I mean, I mean it's stupid because in the
And they
state
say they've
house
got
there's
the
the county
governor ready to call the second special session to
there's the
do
county line
all of
rule.
it.
There's the
Huh?
county line there's the county line rule. You can't cross county lines in state house districts. You take, and I know this isn't every, but like, we're talking about Dallas here. So let's talk about the Dallas members for a while. You literally cannot draw out a single Dallas member, even if
No, I
you
don't think so.
tried.
No,
Like
the point.
there's a few other places maybe, but I mean there's just not a ton of that map was already super aggressive in 2021 at the state house level.
Yeah, I took a look at that, and this is, before Kylie came out, there was
Hmm.
pretty strong evidence that the Texas Republican congressional delegation was sending feedback to the Trump administration saying, whoa,
Yeah,
hey, this is not going to work out. And if you
yeah,
look at the proposed maps, they might pick up seats in the first cycle, but after that, it's unknown to anyone, and it could be much, much worse than it actually. And the other thing is, everybody took a look at that first map, the one with Texas 32 drawn out to Tyler,
yeah,
and was like, that, the thing is absolutely going to go down in flames.
yeah,
It is not going to survive judicial scrutiny. And what's more interesting from the standpoint of the 2021 redistricting is that lawsuit is still pending
yeah,
in Texas and in several other states too. It's not just Texas. And that lawsuit specifically alleges that the 2021 redistricting was done in part to marginalize Latino voting power, which it clearly was. But
yeah,
so they've had hearings in that case, and they've had multiple Texas Republicans testify who were working on that map, so working in the state house
yeah,
to to say that these were all done completely colorblind. We didn't care what race the voter were, which is insane. It's
yeah,
actually illegal to do colorblind
yeah,
redistricting. But um, so those people are under oath saying that, and the lawyer for the challengers, who's a local guy, Sean McCafferty, one of the
yeah. The
best
guy,
lawyers I
yeah,
know, and also, by the way, already involved on this attempt at mid-decade redistricting. But he's moved to reopen the evidence so that he can put those people back on the stand and show
yeah,
them the statements of the Trump administration and show them the statements of the Abbott administration
yeah.
and say, look, were you telling the truth then or are you telling the truth now? Like, which is it going to be here?
Yeah. And what's really crazy about this too is like you look at like the North Texas congressional delegation and Jasmine Crockett has a seat that in the primary and general election pretty much controlled by African Americans. Which is, clearly like a VRA protected district. Mark Vesey has a district that is, basically Black Fort Worth plus Western Dallas County Latinos. You know, the Black community is the plurality in the primary, and Black and Latino voters join together in the general election, so it's a safe seat for Vesey. And then Julie Johnson has and VC's district would be what's referred to as a coalition district. Julie Johnson just has a Democratic vote sink, like a PAC district. That doesn't really matter from like a racial VRA perspective. And so if you're going to do this kind of redistricting, like you need to essentially destroy Julie Johnson's district because it's the only one not protected. But the Trump DOJ sent a letter basically saying like go after VC's district, even though it's a coalition district, which is not creating coalition districts are not required under the VRA, but the VRA has created a lot of legal precedents on creating coalition districts to serve the purpose
There's a lot of
of
incentive to create them.
yeah, and some of it is good governance and some of it is, you know, political. So I mean, creating VC's district essentially meant that you can combine two communities that should each have their own district, but they've been able to pack them together. So, you know, the Democrats only get one district. But they, instead of going after Julie Johnson, they went after Mark Vesey, which, you know, Texas Republicans on their own would never be stupid enough to do.
No.
So
And
they're adhering to like the Trump political team stupidity on this.
well, I think the VC district was originally drawn in 2011,
Yep.
if I'm remembering right.
Yep.
And that first primary, Domingo Garcia only lost by 1,000 votes. That the
Yeah.
original map for that district was a true coalition district because either a Latino or a black person could win it.
Yeah.
And now um, it's been made much more favorable to Mark. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. But
anyway,
that was the Republicans in the 2021 redistricting.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the 2021 redistricting was a packing
Yeah.
exercise. It was reducing the number of districts that Democrats could win, but making those districts unwinnable for Republicans. Just absolutely. And the same thing was going on the other side. They were packing Republican districts. The new congressional 24 went from a real opportunity to
Yeah.
totally out of reach.
Yeah. I call it
Which
the insurrection district. I don't know if you know this, but more January 6th insurrectionists live in the current Texas 24 than any other congressional district in the entire country.
Yes, I've seen the map.
Yeah.
It would be funny if we didn't live here.
Yeah.
But yeah, we proud Texans are always proud of Texas, and you can't criticize Texas from outside, but from
Yeah.
inside, we ought to be able to like say that that might be some neighborhoods where bad people live. It's
Yeah.
also where the Keller School District was going to split and try to get rid of the poor people, and
Yeah.
there are so many bad ideas that come out of that arcs from, Northeast Dallas to Northwest Fort Worth. It's, I got that backward. Northwest
Backwards.
Dallas
Yeah.
to Northeast Fort Worth. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's interesting. You bring up Jasmine, and it's a good opportunity to note that in addition to my constant calls since the last cycle,
Hmm.
for Jasmine to be the Texas nominee for the U.S. Senate, um, there's now a pack calling for her to put her name in the ring, and I can see, and I have not had communications with Jasmine on this other than I tell her she should do it, and she sends me back a cry laughing emoji. Um, but the theory is extremely obvious to anyone who's looking at it. She is very charismatic. She is a great messenger. Um, and I mean, she would mop the floor with Colin Allred. I mean, even him having all that money, I think he would not stand a chance.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean that's an interesting idea.
And it
I
would
mean,
it would throw the donors into a tizzy. I mean, people would defect from Allred. It would be a massive reorganization of the donor class for Texas statewide races for Democrats.
yeah, I mean I don't think she's gonna run. I think she'll run for re-election. You know, I don't know how strong she would be in a statewide general election. Granted, that comes with the obvious caveat that my opinion is that literally all of them are going to lose. Like I don't. Like, can Crockett win? Can Allred win? Can Tallarico win? Like, I think the answer to all that is no. I want to be clear. Like, I don't personally believe that is the case right now in this state. But, I think a lot of this comes from, the National Republican Senatorial Committee actually paid for polling across the country, including in Texas and Democratic primaries. And, they were pushing, you know, essentially all red is weak, Castro is weak, you know, Democrats should nominate Crockett. I think it's who the Republicans would want to run. Obviously, they could be wrong, like you were saying, but I think that does go into the calculus of like, does she run or not? And I just can't imagine her giving up a safe seat to do it, personally.
I think you're right about that. And that's just a guess based on knowing her. She
Yeah,
literally has not given me any reaction other than an emoji. So,
yeah,
but I was gratified that something I've been calling for years is now starting to get other people's attention.
yeah. That's fair.
Um, should we talk DPD?
Sure.
The paper's out with an article which is prompted by public outcry about trying to get DPD to clarify whether it's cooperating with ICE. It's a pretty
Yeah.
simple question, and apparently the brass at DPD, in conjunction with the city attorney, has taken the position that they're going to try to be all things to all people. And it isn't working, it's
Yeah.
not working at all. And so Como now looks like he's been muzzled. I don't think he's allowed to say anything,
It appears
which is a
like, yeah,
very odd position for a big city police chief to be in. But to me, it's unacceptable that the public in Dallas does not know whether its tax dollars are going toward persecuting people.
yeah.
That seems like a basic failure of democracy and transparency.
Yeah, and unlike I think that's really important to distinguish here. The DEI case that we were talking about earlier and this are very different in the sense of like if you
Yeah.
don't acquiesce to the Trump administration on ending DEI programs in city funding, you lose $305 million supposedly. Versus this is a case of if you don't if the city of Dallas does not allow DPD to cooperate with ICE, there's no punishment, essentially. The city can set its own policy on what our police department focuses on and does not focus on. And as of right now, there is no punishment for choosing to do, what residents actually want them to do, which is not cooperate with some of like the most egregious stuff ICE is doing.
But there's also a general order that has not been rescinded. I got confirmation of this, that the rank and file officers are not to cooperate with
Yep.
ICE, and are not to inquire about people's immigration status.
Yep.
And what DPD said in response to the inquiries from the morning news was that it actually doesn't track that at all, um, essentially suggesting that it is allowing individual officers to make that decision for themselves, which is not what the general order says. It's
Hmm.
certainly not what the people of Dallas want. I mean, that's been very clear over multiple city councils that we don't want any of that.
Yeah.
And so we're in a real bad situation where the police department, to my way of thinking, has come more unstuck from public will than it even normally is. It's always the most rogue part of city government. It's just gotten even worse at this point. And I think your point about there not being a real punishment for not helping ICE is true, but it also highlights that the city attorney on both issues, both the DEI issue and this issue, seems to be taking the or giving the advice to council. I don't know that advice. I do not get updates. Council members are not violating the city's privilege by telling me shit, and nor
Yeah.
nor should they. But you get the sense that the city attorney is telling them in closed session, that we need to do these things as prophylactic measures to avoid the ire of the Trump administration. And I think that is extremely poor legal advice, cowardly, and really just contrary to the way that I think people who voted for these representatives would like their representatives to act.
Yeah. I think that's fair if that is the true if that's what's happening behind the scenes, I would agree with you. I mean it's hard to tell right now. Like you said, like
Yeah,
neither
you
one
can
of
only
us has
piece it together from the answers or non-answers that we're getting from both, civilian and uniformed police, city employees.
yeah,
And so I don't know. I I can say I'm deeply disappointed.
yeah,
I don't see a lot. I was hoping that this new council would be injected with more backbone, and so far, I don't see it. Now, it's unfair. They've had one meeting, but
yeah. And they
we'll
couldn't
see
vote
what
on anything,
happens.
supposedly.
Um,
Yeah,
except to abandon all DEI efforts. Lovely.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a tough one to even talk about just because, like you said, like we're not getting a lot of public information about it. Like it's even unclear how much DPD is cooperating with conducting business for ICE, if they're even really doing it at all. Like it could be that these are close to non-existent occurrences, but the
That's my
problem,
hope.
yeah, that's what we hope, and it could certainly be true, but but it's weird that we don't know. Like, how hard would it be for DPD to essentially say like this is not occurring if it was not actually occurring?
And I think that DPD brass and the city attorney probably in conjunction have made the determination that such a statement carries a degree of risk that they're not willing to take. And I
Yeah,
think that that is a policy decision that needs to be made by the council.
yeah,
The council manager form of government only divides power and authority appropriately when council demands that it do so.
yeah,
Because the city staff would certainly love to set policy by themselves. Now they won't admit to that. They would say the opposite, but they are lying. They
yeah,
would very much like to control policy themselves.
yeah.
And that is true of both good city employees and bad city employees. And so it is really the job of council and one of the under publicized jobs of council to demand that the city's form of government be followed extremely strictly. And this
Hmm.
council, let's say the previous council, the 2024-25 council had an incredibly poor track record of that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this because you understand those dynamics better than me. And this is not me defending what is happening, to be clear, but logically, the fact that no one on council is speaking out forcefully right now would seem to hint to me that what you said earlier is true or potentially true, that DPD is not cooperating with ICE, but staff has made the decision not to say so publicly out of fear of what the Trump administration would do. So they're
Yeah,
adhering to city policy, but not admitting publicly that they're adhering to city policy.
I think that's entirely possible, and that might even be the most likely
Yeah.
situation. Um, and so, just from my perspective, I still consider that a failing of counsel. I think that this
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
strategy
not
is silly,
disagreeing per se. I'm not, yeah, not disagreeing per se,
but
but I mean,
that could be the way that they're sleeping at night.
yeah. And yeah, and again, like not defending what is occurring, but like at the end of the day, the actual policy is more important theoretically than the public knowledge. I mean, as residents of the city, like we deserve to know what is happening, to be clear, but like yeah, like you said, it helps people sleep at night knowing that city resources and city staff aren't, pulling folks off the street and sending them to, prisons in El Salvador.
Well, that's my exact point.
Yeah.
The council. if you're right that they've chosen to remain quiet in the hopes that that is the best outcome, and that what that silence is hiding is in fact what people want, that we are not helping persecute immigrants. That's great. Council sleeps better. The public sleeps
Yeah,
worse. So the council
yeah,
has essentially made the rest of us suffer so that they can be comfortable. And that, I think that's a real misunderstanding of their duty here, which I think it also is just another way of arguing that the strategy is very stupid. So,
yeah. That's fair.
um, okay, since we don't have a budget, should we talk about what it should be?
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you want to, but I mean, also just at the top, like in my opinion, and again, like budgeting more than I do, but like, I follow it. I am starting to wonder if the reason that there is not a public budget is because like it's about to be bad. And like essentially like they had to make a bunch of really, really bad choices. Like, kind of the like, do you want your house to get egged or TP'd type of thing? Because the budget shortfall, I mean, what they said it was going to be what, like 30 million? Like, what if it's more than 30 million? Like how bad is it about to get?
Well, and yeah, and that's certainly a good question to ask, and we'll find out soon enough. And listeners, for sure, David and I are going to do a budget episode once the thing comes out because we've been talking about it. We anticipated that it would be out last week, and apparently it's going to be out tomorrow. So
Okay.
sometime next week we'll probably do a budget episode. But the um, so a lot of the numbers that go into the revenue side of the city's budget, we already know. We
Hmm.
have pretty solid estimates from DCAD.
Yeah. On the
Th-
property
th-
taxes
yeah, on the
and things like
property
that.
tax stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, DCAD had got so many protests that they're still going on. I actually think I have one in a few hours.
Yeah.
But and the sales tax numbers we kind of know
Yeah.
from the controller because those we get basically every month.
Hmm.
And and the shortfall didn't look that bad. Like the $30 million looked like the true number. So if it's much worse than that, there does need to be an explanation of that. But it would be the interesting part is going to be this will be the first paying budget that the city has had since 2012, I think. I think 2011 was the actual worst numbers, the last time we had the worst numbers.
Hmm.
Um, but I think maybe 2012 was also a paying budget, like an austerity type budget. This will be the first one where we haven't had expanding revenue in a long time. And if you think about a $30 million shortfall, whatever shortfall means, shortfall is very strange because they're just basically projecting revenue spread over the wish list, and the wish list balloons every year. So to
Yeah.
say 30 million is a shortfall, the better way to look at it is what previous budget year will have the same revenue as we're projected to have for 2025, 2026. And I bet it's not more than 2 years ago. So you're not talking about a catastrophic 20-year ago budget. You're talking about something that you were perfectly adequate on just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to be close
But
to the number on that
but part of
estimate.
that part of that problem though is going to be things cost more than they did 2, 3 years ago. And on especially on some of these like big things like public works, roads, transportation issues, those costs are going up a lot right now, both labor and materials.
Well, except that they're not.
You don't think
That
so?
no, that they've fallen off a cliff this year because of the poor interest rate market for from the standpoint of a developer. Um, Projects aren't getting started. Crews need work. My little bitty project over in East Dallas is coming in under budget because
Oh,
we're
wow.
not paying as much as we anticipated that we would. And the city of Dallas is not growing. Now I mean, we'll see when we get the next census estimate, but the last two have been flat. And so, yes, there is still inflation that occurs for sure
Yep.
because people need raises and I mean, just the freaking dollar gets weaker every year. That's just how it works. That's what inflation is. But my point is simply that we should be able to cover most of what we thought we were going to be able to cover, even if we're 30 million short.
Hmm.
I mean, 30 million, these are all these numbers are the result of complex equations that depend on a lot of assumptions, which is how in years past the the city manager has managed to control council and keep council from coalescing around big changes to the manager's proposed budget by suddenly finding $20 million at the end of the process. And any coalition that was about to make a large change in the manager's budget,
Yeah.
then that coalition is systematically picked off by the manager funding pet projects for members of the coalition in exchange for support for the proposed budget. And
Mm.
it's that sounds really, really Machiavellian and grim.
Yeah.
Um, but that's kind of the way budgeting works. Same thing happens in Congress. Everybody's waiting for CBO numbers, and then suddenly they change, or they're waiting
Yeah.
for in the Senate, they're waiting for the parliamentarian to decide whether things can be tied together and stuff like that. So I'm making Dallas sound really grim, but it's actually not that big an outlier. So I don't know. The thing I'm gonna want to see in the budget is that I always want to see is how much is public safety going to prohibit us from having the services we actually want?
Hmm.
And that's always the question. And going back to the early 2010s, Lee Kleinman and I were pressing for and were totally unsuccessful at, I would hasten to add, at capping the percentage of the general fund budget that can be used for public safety, which you know, you have these people like Dallas Hero who claim that the city's unsafe and we need so many more officers and all this shit. And what they're really arguing for is an unlimited budget for public safety. And I think people who care about parks and roads and economic development and libraries and all the other things that the city does and allegedly does poorly, like the
Yeah.
potholes. If you care about potholes, you need to think rationally about how much money we're going to spend for public safety. And if there's not a limit number that you can put on that, you are living in a fantasy world.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, and didn't Dallas Hero do like the exact opposite, where it's at least 50% of new expenditures have
Yeah,
to go? Yeah.
50% of every new dollar, which they
Yeah.
Man, that was the weirdest little quirk news cycle in that whole
Yeah.
story.
And it wasn't
You know,
public safety even. It had to be police, right? Like they even like
yeah,
cleaved out
not yeah,
fire
fuck
from
you,
the,
fire.
yeah.
And but that was the weirdest thing. Council members started criticizing very rightly that
Yeah.
this required the sequestration of 50% of every new dollar into police.
Yeah.
And then Dallas Hero went nuts and said, "No, it's not every new dollar." And we're like, yes, that's exactly what you
That's what
wrote.
you
What, what,
wrote. Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah. No, I
So I
mean,
don't know.
yeah. And when they go into a budget shortfall, do they try to cut almost like universally other than some of the sacred cows? Or,
It depends on how bad it is. And we don't
yeah.
have a recent example of a minor budget
Uh-huh.
shortfall. We just have the Great Recession. That's the
Yeah.
last time we've had negative budgets in the city of Dallas.
Yeah.
And when I say negative, I mean falling revenue,
Yeah.
or revenue not keeping up with the natural pace of inflation.
Yeah.
That's another austerity type budget. And
Yeah.
so we don't have an example, but the last time we did it on the catastrophic level, there was some level of pain at every department, including police.
Yeah.
Now, that cut to police and fire was the least long-lived of any of the cuts. It got
Yeah.
restored absolutely the fastest, and then in the more fat years that followed, they were able to not only regain all those cuts, but much more.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm a obviously on the record huge skeptic of police staffing, not of police pay. I would like to point out that I spearheaded multiple raises for
Yeah.
police and fire, but the size of these departments needs to be really thought about in a strategic way so that when we're otherwise the budget doesn't fucking mean anything, you know? Back when David Brown was chief, one year he exceeded the biggest overtime budget the department had ever received by about $20 million.
Hmm.
And the thing is, once he does that, those checks have already been written to the officers, and council just doesn't have any choice but to fund it, which
Yeah.
ought to cause him to get fired, but it didn't.
Didn't. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean that's fair. I mean, I think council and staff like they're about to have a hard job. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if like we get a library closure or something. Because I mean,
For
what
sure.
it was Skillman that was on the chopping block last time,
Hmm.
and Councilwoman Blackman had to put together votes to save it. And this time, I mean, I don't know if and that wasn't a budget shortfall. That was just it was the not rising with inflation, right? Like the growth, yeah, revenue didn't rise with inflation and all that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think things that people care about but don't advocate for as much, like libraries, like arts and culture, are going to be on the chopping block. Other things like just city technology and keeping up with being able to serve residents on a lot of things that matter will probably fall off too.
Well, just to put a coda on the Skillman Library, um, I think Paula may have pointed this out during the debate on that. It has higher utilization numbers than a lot of libraries. And
Yeah.
it's on my way home a lot of times, and that parking lot is always full. Like
Yeah.
that's a really well used library. So I think Paula got that one right.
Yeah. But I mean, if they come for a library, I imagine staff recommendation is going to be the same. It's going to come for that one. Because
Well,
didn't,
the other thing that is going to be very interesting is the city just made the biggest single investment in parks that it has in its entire history.
yeah.
And without O&M money for the parks department,
Hmm.
we're not going to be able to build the parks that were promised in the bond. Or if we do build them, they will not be maintained in any way.
Yeah.
That's going to be the real pain point because people just voted for this massive investment and just from a practical standpoint, without any decision of a policymaker, those are going to be obsoleted and proved impossible.
Yeah. And you probably know this better than I do, but I did hear recently that the city is struggling to get some of these bonds secured. Like the pace at
Yeah.
which, yeah. And a lot of that has to do
The
with the
market
national,
is
yeah,
the market is trash for bonds just in general.
yeah,
We're having trouble selling tax credits for my low income housing developers, you know.
yeah,
It's a shit market. Now, there's always a lot of market timing that goes into bonds, and
yeah.
the CFO's office at the city has actually been pretty adept at selling when they can sell.
Hmm.
And it's one of the few things where you can look at the time frame you promised the public to execute on in the bond package, and a legitimate reason to miss a deadline is a bad market. And
Yeah,
so I'm very sympathetic to staff if they're
yeah.
facing bad market conditions.
And that'll just delay all the projects though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean,
But you know,
I look at some of the stuff that the bond was supposed to fund near me, and I look at like the spreadsheets that are public, and it's like, we haven't even sold off bonds for things that were, they were shooting for, we'll have this completed in 2026 type of stuff. And like, it just feels like we're going to miss that deadline.
oh, if I'm not mistaken, there might still be bond money sloshing around from
2017.
2006.
Oh, from
No,
'06.
yeah.
Wow.
There's
I
definitely bond money from 2012 still
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And the total spend from 2017 got updated recently. It had been hovering at like 60% for
Hmm.
forever, and then
Yeah.
got updated when um, the our previous public works director, just before he left, he updated it to show at like 83%. And so I'm not totally sure I believe that because it kind of happened overnight.
Yeah. That's fair.
Anyway, the point there is simply that we promise people a 5-year implementation period on bond packages, and just put
Yeah.
that out of your mind. Don't
Yeah.
believe it, and also don't worry about
Yeah. It'll happen.
it. The money eventually does get spent. It just takes a hell of a long time.
Yeah. There's a big project here in Oak Cliff that's about to finish up. That was a Scott Griggs thing.
Oh yeah.
Like, like it's 6 years after he left office.
Well, like the Mockingbird Bridge for the trail system um, was funded, I don't know when, back in prehistory.
Yeah.
And when I got in office, I had to work, I don't know, 2 or 3 years to get them to finalize the acquisition of the property they needed to build the damn thing.
Mm.
And so it was, it was such a big deal. It had stalled out so bad that Angela and I did a second groundbreaking. She'd already done one back when
Yeah.
the funding got approved. And so she was funny as hell. I was like, I want you to come to the second groundbreaking we're gonna do because it didn't take the first time. And
Yeah.
she's like, she just texted me back, groundbreaking to Electric Boogaloo. Oh, and then
That's
her
funny.
husband had groundbreaking to the Rebreaking.
Oh, geez.
Um, what else do we need to cover before we anxiously await the drop of the budget tomorrow in our next episode?
Um, Speaking of other things that haven't happened that it feels like it should have happened, no committee assignments yet for council. Feels a little bit.
No, yeah, and the first time he did that, he delayed that until October, like
Yeah.
mid-October.
Yeah.
No committee work for a long
But
time.
yeah. But it's historically, a little like why don't we have committees? I know it's not in the past few years it's not weird, but in the big scheme of things it's weird.
Well, the big problem is that this council, or council going back 5, 6 years at this point, has been super adamant about sending everything through council committees. I mean, we used to, send most stuff through committees, but every now and then we would take up something without committee
Yeah.
input. And so I don't know. I mean, if that policy is something that they care about, you get,
Yeah.
got to go to committee, then essentially they are saying that from June 23rd or whatever through whenever committees get appointed, there is no work happening at the city.
Yeah.
And that's not actually true. Like I've got something that'll be considered hopefully next week on an emergency basis because it hasn't
Hmm.
been to a committee. And so,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that that happens, and it's not the worst thing. It doesn't prevent anybody from asking questions. But if committees are valuable, then why don't we have them?
Yeah. It's odd. But that'll be, I mean, it really matters, like you said, like given how much stuff goes through committee nowadays, who does the mayor entrust to lead some of these big ones? Obviously, like some of
The
his
question
top,
will be how many chairs does Kara hold?
I was literally about to say that, because like the folks that the mayor gets along with best get committee chairmanships, as well as kind of the non non-offensive or non-problematic folks. So I mean, like, you know, Atkins chairing
Eco Dev.
economic eco dev last time, like, it's not because Atkins was like one of the mayor's best friends, but it's just like you could trust Atkins to do it. And like those are the two pulls that the mayor pulls from. And it's just
Well,
going to be
and the
interesting to
key the
see.
key from the mayor's standpoint is to not allow his serious opponents to obtain a quorum of any committee. And
Yeah.
frankly, if he can avoid having three of them on a committee,
Yeah.
then he doesn't face the prospect of them doing a three-person memo to force something onto a committee agenda over the wishes of his handpicked chair.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have been reading the tea leaves and hearing gossip from City Hall, and I think you will see Kara running public safety and legislative again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Uh, I think Jesse moves from housing to transportation and infrastructure.
Okay.
I think he winds up taking over for Omar at that spot.
Yeah.
And the rumor is that whatever bad blood between Chad and the mayor has at least partially been resolved, and that the mayor is going to consolidate eco-dev and housing and put Chad there,
Okay.
which is very interesting, and I think good. Apparently Kim wants to combine those two departments also, so they would be aligned at the staff level, and then the council committee would be the same as well. And I'm very interested to see how that works. Her consolidation of public works with transportation has
Hmm.
been enormously positive.
Yeah.
We're already reaping positive gains from that because the construction part of transportation is now aligning with the policy part of transportation, and we're starting to see the actual implementation of the Complete Streets Design Manual and Vision Zero and the things that we've said we want for so long, but that we just never actually executed on.
Yeah. And I
So
mean, you know
these,
better than most that housing is such a key component of economic development, especially in Dallas's economy right now.
yeah, and as a practical matter, when you're trying to raise money from the city for an affordable housing project, you try to dip from both
Hmm.
buckets.
Yeah.
And if one shuts you out, sometimes the other one will fund you. And
Yeah.
it shouldn't be like that. A consolidated department would make life much easier for developers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you even saw, speaking of the bond earlier, you even saw with the bond of like those three propositions at the end. Was it GHI or like that had to deal with like economic development and
Yeah,
housing
yeah, yeah.
and homelessness? Like they were all
Hmm.
basically treated as like one ballot measure.
Yeah.
From a like what can we do with this money? Like it was even kind of comical the fact that they made it three different ballot measures as opposed to one for, ballot fatigue purposes.
Yeah. My I was not opposed to the housing bond at all. And I think people who opposed the housing bond were idiots because it was extremely popular.
Yeah.
But I do think we could have made better choices with the allocation of the other stuff to give more to specifically to housing.
Yeah.
Housing got so hosed worse than any other department in the bond process. And when everyone agrees that the lack of affordable housing is problem number one for the city of Dallas,
Yeah.
it is extremely hypocritical to send the bond package to the voters that we did. And
Yeah.
there's no other way to say it. That was a deal that Tanel Atkins cut at the end of the council process just to get something to the voters.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's I think what everyone had heard. And yeah, I mean I supported the bond. I voted for all 10 propositions. I encourage others to do so as well, but I don't think it was the best bond that could have come out of council. I think more money should have gone to housing, like you said.
Hmm.
And I do think it's going to create the problem that you brought up earlier of we're going to build a bunch of new shiny parks and then not maintain them. Um,
Hmm.
which is a constant problem here. And, I want to be clear, like I support, a lot of the initiatives that the city is doing around, everyone deserves to be able to like walk to a park within, what is it, like 10 minutes or whatever
Yeah.
the national standard is. Like that's great, but we're generally doing a bad job maintaining some of our current parks. Not all of them,
Yeah,
but some of
if it's
them.
a 10-minute walk to a park with high weeds and needles,
Yeah.
yeah, that I don't know that that's really accomplishing what we wanted.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I don't know. I'm I'm such a I've gotten to be such a crazy liberal in my old age that my thought process on bonds is we should wish list everything, pass a really big bond, and then raise taxes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, so a funny Bond story is Nathan Collins, who used to be one of like the best reporters here in Dallas. He worked for KRA, but moved out of state recently. Reached out to me for some questions about the
Question.
bond, and specifically, it was some of his stories along the lines of like how do these bonds like take shape and the funding behind promoting them and all that kind of stuff. And he asked me like a very fundamental question of like some of these projects don't even seem like they should be funded out of a bond. They should be funded out of, general fund and other things. Like, why is Dallas doing this out of the bond? And I was like, that's a great question, Nathan. I don't think anyone has thought of that. Or the people that do think about it like have existential dread about it. It's like, why are we doing this?
Well, the crucible for that question is always streets.
Yeah,
Because we fund streets ought to be in a normal life cycle, all maintenance of streets ought to be done out of the general
yeah.
fund.
Because they're
And
depreciating value, a
all
depreciating asset, right? Like that's the logic, or like
uh
some of the logic.
no, it's that the maintenance of a street and the repair of a street is not a 20-year durable good that we're supposed to restrict our bond funding to.
Uh-huh.
And so it's supposed to be pay as you go. It's maintenance and
Yeah,
operations, and bonds are not supposed to be used for maintenance and operations.
yeah.
Repairs, maintenance, and operations. What we do though, and then the bond is supposed to be used for new facilities. Um,
Yes, yeah, that's what I was trying to get at earlier. Like, not
so
saying like we make money off of a new fire station, but like it's theoretically like an appreciating value add to the city because a new fire station will make all the other land around it more valuable.
it, and the key question is it 20-year durable
And it
infrastructure? And it
is,
is.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but with a street, if you let it go long enough,
yeah.
it becomes a capital need that can be funded by the bond because it's in such bad condition that it's being reconstructed rather than maintained. And so that's always the question. That's the line between
Yeah,
general fund maintenance and operations and bond funded infrastructure development. And you can see how it's subject to shenanigans.
yeah, that's true.
Well, man, I gotta go
Okay,
and try to see some elk.
okay, have fun.
I hope your afternoon is good too.
I'll try. But good talking to you. I'll see you next time.
Great to see you.